Hi everyone, my name is Natalie and I'm the oncology pharmacy resident at Monument Health. And for this month's Clinical Pearl, I'm actually talking about a little more of a operational rather than a clinical topic, talking about a new joint drug repository that has been formed between Avera McKinnon in Sioux Falls and Monument Health. For the objectives for this presentation, I first wanted to talk a little bit about the background for drug repositories, what they are, and what has been some of the legislation related to these programs, and then talk more specifically about the process for donating, receiving, and dispensing repository medications, and then finally talk about some of the specific Monument Health documents related to this new joint drug repository. So first off, moving into defining and what is a drug repository. So for a little bit of background on drug repositories, as I'm sure we are all very aware, there is a high cost associated with medication waste every year. So it's estimated that in hospitals annually over $3 billion worth of medications are disposed of, and that cost is almost $2 billion for long-term care facilities. So huge cost associated with medication waste, and that can be due to a variety of very rational issues, such as the patient has a change in their status, there's been a dose modification, there's been an improvement in their condition, or the patient has passed away. These drug repository programs can be very beneficial for allowing for donation of these unused medications rather than just discarding them. And then that provides the ability to redispense these medications to qualifying patients. As of 2021, over 40 states have passed legislation that does allow for prescription drug repository projects. And that brings me to South Dakota law. And just this past November, House Bill 1086 was enacted that does allow for the redistribution of donated prescription drugs and medical supplies. And I wanted to go through some of the highlights of this state law because I think it's beneficial to kind of understand some of the general requirements for the repository program. So specifically for donated drug requirements, the product does need to be in its original sealed, tamper-evident packaging. Medications that are unit dosed or are in blister packs with the outside packaging open may still be eligible for donation. The packaging does need to contain the lot and expiration date, and the expiration date does need to be more than 6 months after the date the drug was donated, although in certain cases they do allow that expiration date to be shorter, especially if it's a highly utilized, high demand medication. And then there can't be any evidence of tampering, misbranding, or deterioration of the product. There are certain prescription medications that are not allowed to be donated, so that does include all controlled substances. So if a patient or individual does come in wanting to donate a controlled substance, that does need to be returned to that individual for disposal. Or if that is not possible, there needs to be witness documentation of the disposal of that controlled substance between two individuals at the pharmacy. Medications that do have special storage requirements, such as refrigeration, also are not allowed to be donated to the repository. For the pharmacist that receives that medication at the facility, there needs to be an inspection for any signs of adulteration or misbranding, making sure it's suitable for dispensing, and then it does have packaging with lot and expiration dating and is an eligible product for the repository. They do note that if, for whatever reason, the lot number is not available on the product, that may still be acceptable for the repository, but in the event that there was ever a recall of that specific medication, without the lot number to verify if that is part of the recall, that medication in the repository inventory would need to be disposed of. Specifically for donor requirements for repository medication, so they do need to be adult individuals, age 18 or more, in lawful possession of the donation. And then they do need to sign a donor form attesting that they have followed the manufacturer recommendations for storage. The medication has been stored in its original unopened sealed packaging, and it's not been adulterated or misbranded. For dispensing of donated prescription medications, very closely follows the dispensing process for any other medication, so needs to be prescribed by a healthcare professional, needs to be intended for use by an eligible patient, and then needs to be dispensed by a licensed pharmacist in a participating pharmacy following all dispensing laws. For HIPAA purposes, for the repository medication, the original donor's identification and that original dispensing pharmacy will be removed from the product before dispensing. And then there may be an optional handling fee that pharmacies may charge. Maximum handling fee would be $25. And then any repository medication is not eligible for reimbursement through any insurance or medication assistance program. For patients receiving medications from the repository, there are certain, high priority criteria. So thinking about patients that are indigent or those that have no active third-party drug coverage or really any other person that is in need of a medication. So particularly from the Cancer Care Center, I think this will be very helpful for patients that need to start therapy right away with an oral chemotherapy agent, but may have a application pending for free drug from a manufacturer or grant coverage, and may just need a short supply until that coverage is available. So I think the repository will be very helpful for these patients. The recipient does also need to sign a form attesting that they are an eligible patient and that they acknowledge that this is a donated product. And then in certain instances, they may need to waive the requirement for child-resistant packaging. There are several hurdles that can be associated with drug repositories. One being the program requirements can be burdensome, so limitations on who can donate or receive medications. Also, the potential for increased paperwork and administrative tasks. There can be issues with financial resources in terms of promoting or advertising drug repositories, and then in general, there can be a lack of awareness and/or participation in these programs as well. So that brings me then to our joint repository with the Vera McKinnon and Monument Health. And there were several considerations that went into pursuing this joint collaboration, one being the rural nature of South Dakota. So there are certainly issues with patients having easy accessibility to medications, trying to get refills. All of those issues factor in with being in a more rural state. So the thought being that by, combining resources into one inventory with these two health systems, we can help with the financial stewardship on both the organizational level as well as the patient level, and then really help to improve patient care and accessibility by increasing the overall volume in that drug repository. In terms of the background of the repository, specifically at Avera McKinnon, this was started by the Avera McKinnon Specialty Pharmacy, or ASP, and they were really instrumental in developing this program from the ground up, did a lot of promotion in terms of making sure patients and providers were educated about the process. Patients receive paperwork on their initial fill regarding this program. And I think it's especially important for patients, since it's really counterintuitive to what patients are often told about other medications, that it's only intended for you and this can never be reused. But for some of these high dollar specialty medications, making sure patients are aware that there's the potential, if there's a dose change or modification, that we may be able to reuse their unopened medication. And then they also did a lot of advertising in the community as well. So with the joint drug repository program going forward, any medication that we receive here at Monument Health for the repository, we will ship directly to ASP for storage. And ideally, we would have the donor sign their form at Monument Health in person. But if for whatever reason we're not able to get that person, or maybe they've left the clinic or the pharmacy, the ASP website also has direct links to the donor form, so the patient can be directed there and they can complete the donor form. For products that are donated, they do need to have an expiration date within 1 year of the original dispense date or the full manufacturer expiration, whichever is sooner. And then, as I mentioned, the ASP website is very helpful for patients that are not able to fill out paperwork in person. So they can be directed to, by searching the Avera McKinnon Specialty Pharmacy, directed to their website. And then, as you can see, there are links for how to be a donor or a recipient and links to both of those forms. For the drug repository inventory, Monument Health pharmacists will also have access to that inventory to know what is available for dispensing. And this will be available through our Monument Health Teams access, and that will allow actually access to the Avera McKinnon Teams access using the Microsoft Authenticator app. And then you'll be able to locate the Excel file that's under the Avera Teams site for the drug repository. I did want to point out, so on Teams at Monument Health, you will need to go to that upper right-hand corner on your Teams login, and you'll need to choose in that drop-down menu the Avera guest, and then that will prompt you to ask if you are trying to sign in to Avera when you click that. And then that will open the Microsoft Authenticator app on your phone, and it will give you a one-time code to enter, saying that yes, you are approving this sign-on, and then you'll be entered into the Avera team site. And again, we'll be able to look at that as a read-only version of that Excel file for the inventory. For sending prescriptions for the repository, Monument Health pharmacists will send the prescription via fax or electronically or via mail to ASP for dispensing. For prescriptions, they do need to include in the comment that it needs to be fulfilled from the donated drug repository for the ASP pharmacist to know what inventory to use. The order can be for any day supply up to 30-day supply. In some instances, though, a 90-day supply may be permitted as well. With it being a repository medication, however, there's no guarantee of future fills. And then pharmacists at ASP will provide the initial patient counseling for any medication that's dispensed from their pharmacy, and they will mail the repository medication directly to the recipient and will not charge a dispensing fee. Last, I wanted to just cover a few of the documents that are specific to Monument Health related to this joint drug repository. And there are 3 different documents. There's the drug repository protocol, the donor form, and the recipient form. And these will be stored on the respective SharePoint sites for the Monument Health Specialty Pharmacy, the Cancer Care Institute, and the outpatient pharmacy. So first we have the protocol that describes the process and more of the detail related to this joint drug repository program, very closely based off of the Avera McKinnon protocol, just with added detail related to dispensing and receiving from Monument Health specifically. And then we do also have the donor form, which again, ideally will be filled out in person when a patient or an individual does bring in medication for donation, and this will be shipped with the product to ASP for storage at their facility. Again, however, if that's not possible, though, the patient or individual can be directed to the ASP website for completion of the form. And then there also will be a recipient form, which again, if possible, we do have a recipient form where the patient will sign and acknowledge the top half, and then the bottom half of the document will be filled out by a pharmacist at ASP with the actual specific drug information. However, if it's not possible or if the patient is not available, again, they can be directed to the ASP website for completion of that recipient form. So in summary, drug repositories are unique in that they allow for donation and redistribution of medications that may have been unused or discarded, and so very valuable in terms of decreasing cost to the healthcare system, and particularly medication waste. And I did want to point out that, of course, I'm thinking mostly of our high-dollar oral chemotherapy agents, but also they can be medications that are expensive but maybe short-term, such as Lovenox injections, or even anticoagulation like our Rivaroxaban or Apixaban that can be cost-prohibitive per patients as well. South Dakota, this past November, passed House Bill 1086 that allows for redistribution of donated prescription drugs and medical supplies. And we have recently formed a joint drug repository between Monument Health and Avera McKinnon, particularly utilizing the Avera McKinnon specialty pharmacy. The goal being that really, with this rural state of South Dakota, we want to work together to improve accessibility to these specialty and high-cost medications for patients at Monument Health, but also for all residents of South Dakota. In terms of the specifics for donating, receiving, and dispensing repository medications, we do have donor and recipient forms that do need to be filled out either in person or via the ASP website. Any donated medication will be shipped to ASP for storage along with the completed donor form. And then Monument Health pharmacists will have access to the Excel inventory with the Avera drug repository so they know what's available for dispensing. Any prescription that's sent to ASP for repository medication does also need to include the comment to fill from the repository supply. And then the pharmacist at ASP will provide initial patient counseling for any medication that's dispensed from their pharmacy, and the medication will be shipped directly to the patient, again, on a fill-by-fill basis. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm excited to see what happens with this joint drug repository. And here are my references. Thanks so much.